Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Happy 2021. Hallelujah. 2020 is behind us. Woo-hoo, yay. Hope everybody had a good holiday season. Hope everybody had a happy new year. We are starting today, 2021, with sirens, I swear. Sometimes they're further away than others. They must be testing the one really close to Clintonville this week because it's pretty loud. Anyway, so it's a new year. So I wanted to start today with my focus class being about frequently asked questions that I hear all the time. So there are a list of questions that I get almost daily from people that are just discovering the amazing Yamuna work, people that are just starting their journey into this form of movement education. I get a lot of questions, and most of them are ones that I've heard many times. And I have a lot of new members that have just joined this group. So welcome to my new members in this group. We're so happy to have you as part of this community. Our group has been around since August, and it has already started to grow and blossom, and I am just in love with the support that we have here, with the camaraderie, with sharing of experiences, all of it. So if you're brand new to the group, I'm so happy to have you here. You're in the right place at the right time. I'm going to talk today about questions that you've probably had if you're new to this work and new to this group. I will be going over a list of the most frequently asked questions. Now, there may be questions that I don't have on my list. So as you're watching, if you have something that's been a burning question in your mind, please feel free to type it in the comments. And also say hello. I forgot to say that. If you're here and you're watching live, I see quite a few of you there. Say hello. And if you're watching later on replay, give me a hashtag replay so that I see it and hear that you were there watching the video. But as you're watching, I highly encourage you to please type your questions into the comment box, and I will try to answer them live in real time. And if I happen to miss it, which sometimes we have some technical issues, I'm going to scroll down here. I don't see anyone yet giving me any questions, but if I happen to miss it live, then I will certainly go back and answer the question later. So chances are your question will be addressed today in this little mini class, but if not, definitely type it in the comments. So welcome. Just for anyone that's just jumping on, I'm going to answer the most frequently asked questions today. So I want to go pretty quickly through this because I'm hoping that this video can be used in the future as sort of a little welcome video, and I don't want to make it super duper long where it's daunting to watch it. So we're going to dive right in. So let me start by saying, hey Amy, good to see you. Happy New Year. I'm going to start with my basic description of what Yamuna is, because many of you probably are like, what the heck is Yamuna? So let me start by saying that Yamuna is a movement education system designed to prevent and rehabilitate chronic pain and injury. So it's very much about identifying your less than optimal movement patterns. I used to say negative movement patterns, but I don't really like how that sounds. So less than optimal movement patterns, it's about identifying those and then also replacing those patterns with something more optimal. So it's very much about tuning into old inherent patterns that you have and replacing those. So that said, it's very much a combination. It's twofold. There's two main aspects of the Yamuna work. And the first one is probably the most important, and that is bone. So this is something that sets the Yamuna work apart from all other myofascial and bodywork techniques. Most myofascial techniques focus on just that, the fascia. This work focuses on bone first and foremost, and then second, all soft tissue, including fascia. So yes, this work is myofascial work, but it is so much more than that. It is way more comprehensive than simply needing superficial soft tissue. So when we talk about the bone and the muscle component, it's kind of like a combination of something akin to chiropractic in that it's structural realignment work. So it's not chiropractic, but it is realignment work of your structure. And then the second part of that, the soft tissue piece, that's the self-massage, working muscle from origin to insertion. So we restore space between the bones, realign the structure, reorganize the structure, and then after that, we can start to iron out superficial tissue, deep intrinsic tissue from origin to insertion. So in that way, Yamuna body rolling is very anatomy specific. It follows the body's natural logic and order. So we always first work in the bone and the joint, and then work the muscle origin to insertion. So there's no random rolling up and down. There's no, everything is very directed. Everything, there's very set routines. There's hundreds and hundreds of routines for all of the different body parts, and it's all very anatomy specific. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what Yamuna body rolling is. It can be done in a group setting, it can be done in a one-on-one setting, and the best part is the whole point of it is that you learn how to do it on your own body. So you become your own body worker, and you are empowered to troubleshoot your own aches and pains and work on your own body anytime, anywhere. So it's very, very versatile. It's adaptable to all ability levels. If a person is not able to get on the floor, they can do this work in a chair. If they're not able to get in a chair, they can do this work in a bed. It can be done against a wall. It can be done while you're working. It can be done while you're traveling. It can be done while you're cooking. The possibilities are endless. So it's very much integratable into your life. So that said, that's kind of what Yamuna body rolling is. Now I'm going to consult my notes here, make sure I don't miss any of these questions. So the one question, probably the very first question that I get the most common question that I get is, how is Yamuna body rolling different from foam rolling? Well, the answer is there's a lot of differences. So I'm just going to start right in. So the first thing that makes this work different from foam rolling is the anatomical piece. So typically in a foam rolling practice, there is no direction on anatomy. There's no set routines to follow. It's more like, oh, this feels kind of good, I'm going to do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that if it feels good. The point is, though, that it's not re-educational. So foam rolling is not going to tap into your structure. It's not going to reorganize your bones. It's not going to re-educate the way that you move. So while it feels good while you're doing it, it's not going to create lasting changes. The other thing about foam rolling is that it does not address bone at all. It only works superficial soft tissue. And unfortunately with foam rolling, there is a lot of misinformation out there. And so if you've ever read a health magazine or a fitness magazine or gone to a fitness class in a gym or something, you've probably heard somebody say at some point, you should roll up and down your IT band, or you should roll up and down your leg if you have leg pain, right? Or if you have tightness in your leg muscles. Resounding no, please never roll up and down. The whole point of rolling out a muscle is to tap into your body's muscle memory. Our muscles have a beginning and they have an end. The muscle fibers move in a certain direction, just like fur on an animal, or just like, I can't think of the word of carpet. It starts with a P. When carpet fibers go a certain way and then you vacuum them the other way, you can see them look a different way. Imagine if you pet an animal, a cat, the way that the fur doesn't go. They don't usually like that, right? So now imagine that you're rolling up your muscle. The fibers are going this way and you're rolling up this way. That's incredibly confusing for your body's neurological system. It's sending mixed messages. We're trying to create space and iron out a muscle. If you roll randomly up and down, you are saying in one breath, roll down, lengthen that muscle, and in the next breath you're saying, oh, no, now we're going to send that muscle back the opposite way. We're going to bring your thigh bone back up into your hip. No, we want to let the thigh bone drop out of the hip. We want to roll all the way down to the insertion of the muscle. So never ever go up and down. If you have a foam rolling practice, always start at the top and work your way down. If you're not sure where the origin of a muscle is versus the insertion, a good guideline is that the origin is usually more medial, more closer to your center, and the insertion is usually further from your center. So an example of that would be in your leg. The origin of your leg muscles, whether it's the front or the back, they start up at the top, more towards the center, and they work their way down to the next joint. In that case, it's the knee. So always go origin to insertion, and if you don't know which is which, start more towards the middle of your body and work your way out. So that's the biggest thing that's the difference between Yamuna body rolling and foam rolling. The final thing I think that the difference is, obviously a foam roller is a cylinder, the ball is a sphere. You can get more anatomy specific with the sphere. So say you want to try to get into your shoulder joint, deep in your shoulder joint, or deep in your SI joint, or deep in your hip joint, or wherever it is. You literally cannot access that with a large sphere. One of my teacher trainees, I'm also a teacher trainer, I certify other people to become Yamuna body rolling teachers. One of my wonderful trainees and now colleague, Susie Wilkoff, who is, check her out, Yamuna body rolling with Susie, I think is her page. She's lovely. She came up with this awesome tagline that she's given me permission to use, so I'm crediting Susie. She says the foam roller or the Yamuna ball goes where no foam roller has ever gone before, and that is absolutely true. You cannot get into these small little itsy bitsy anatomical places with a foam roller. So those are most of the differences. The final one I would say about the foam roller is just that a foam roller is dense and hard. It does not have a give or a buoyancy to it. The Yamuna balls are designed and patented to encourage your body to release into them, to relax into them. So when you have a foam roller in a really tight area, sometimes it's very difficult to totally relax. The re-education part cannot happen unless you are in a relaxed state. So if you're on a foam roller and you are gripping, tightening, you cannot learn how to reorganize your body because your muscles are, they're in the way, they're creating noise, they're holding things together. So your body's not able to return to its original cellular and muscular memory. So that's a lot of differences. I'm not knocking the foam roller. If you have a foam rolling practice, like I said, absolutely keep doing it. It feels good. Be sure though to work anatomically from origin to insertion. Okay, so that brings us to the next question then. How do the balls differ from other therapy balls and sports balls? So first of all, I'm just going to say right now, never do any of this work or any other kind of rolling work with a sports ball. You might be able to get away with tennis balls. I don't recommend pinky balls, lacrosse balls for this kind of work. Again, it's the same thing. They do not have a give to them. I'm just going to use this one right here that I have in my hand. See how squishy this is? This is pretty squishy. So I can squeeze this with my hands, and this is the densest ball that I happen to have right here. This is the hardest, densest ball, and it's still quite buoyant. There is plenty of give. So when I lean my neck into this or I lie my back over it, I'm not tempted to tighten and resist it. Instead, I want to invite it in. I want to allow it to penetrate through all those layers of fascia and muscle and tendon and make its way to the bone. So when you use something like a really hard sports ball, you're not allowing that to happen. And in fact, when Yamuna created this work, all of the ball work that she has created was born out of a hands-on system that she was already doing for like 20 years before this ball stuff started. When she started to realize that people needed a way to do the work on their own bodies, that's when she started playing with balls, just like we all do, right? So she started with tennis balls, golf balls, lacrosse balls, all that stuff, and quickly saw that it was not providing the re-education that she was able to give her clients in the hands-on work. So she set out to design her own version of that. So if you have other balls that you are wanting to use with this work, sports balls, big no-no. It can absolutely cause injury and certainly confusion in your neurological system. If you have other balls like yoga tune-up balls, role model balls, that kind of stuff, you can certainly try this work with those balls. You will not injure yourself because they're really soft, but I will say that those balls, again, are designed specifically for fascia. All those practices that I just mentioned are great, by the way. Melt, tune-up fitness, role model method, all good stuff. It's all very focused on fascia. So if you're using those balls for the Yamuna work, you're going to be missing that entire piece of the bone stimulation and the reorganization. But you won't hurt yourself with it. So if that's all that you have, you can certainly try it. It'll probably feel really good, but it's going to be lacking a little bit. So difference between Yamuna balls and other balls. So now let's talk more about the different kinds of the Yamuna balls. I already explained how they are buoyant and they have a give to them. So now I'm going to back up a little bit and show you kind of the different balls. So I'll start out by saying you don't have to have every single ball for this practice. In fact, the ones that I use the most are the black pair and the pearl, which is this one here. The pearl is the smallest of the larger three balls, and it's probably the most versatile and adaptable in that it is small enough that if this is the only ball that you have, it's small enough that you can still get into pretty small joints that you might otherwise use the black ball for, but it's large enough that you can use it. It'll provide more support for things like rolling up the spine, filling up the space in the neck, that kind of thing. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. And in fact, back in the old days when the colors were different, I'll talk about that in a second. You can see this red ball here. But back in the old days, there was an entire video called the Anywhere video, and it used this ball. It was a different color then, but it was dubbed the Anywhere ball. So this is great for travel, great for smaller joints, larger joints, etc. So if you only are going to get maybe a couple of balls, I highly recommend either the pearl or the gold. I do say maybe the gold for those of you that might have bone density, lower bone density. If you've ever been diagnosed with osteoporosis or osteopenia, the gold ball is great for that. Doctors always prescribe weight bearing for those issues, and that's exactly what the Yamuna work is. It's by definition weight bearing. So this is great work for that, and we've seen lots of improvements in bone density tests and things over the years as people begin rolling. But if you do have a bone density issue, I would recommend the gold instead, and then you can kind of graduate to a smaller, more specific ball. But if you don't have anything like that, this is a great starter ball, as well as the black pair. I literally use both of those every day. I travel with them, etc. So if you're only going to get one or two, probably recommend either the pearl and or the black pair. Now I will say these balls are incredibly affordable. The value that you get for these balls is off the chart. So I mentioned the old colors. This ball right here, like you can see, it's the old logo. Okay, this ball, when they rebranded, when Yamuna changed her color palette, this ball became this ball. They are the same ball. This ball is 16 years old. 16 years old. This is one of the first balls I ever had when I first started working at the Yamuna studio on Perry Street in the West Village back in 2005. This ball is my favorite ball. I still use it all the time. It feels exactly like it did 16 years ago. So that's the kind of value that these balls provide. I think this ball is 25 or 26. It was probably 24 back when I bought it. And it's still good. So these are literally one-time investments. It's not like you have to keep buying new balls and all of that. Once you have them literally forever. So I just want to point that out because I think that the value is incredibly high for these balls. Now, the gold, I already mentioned, it's great for, it's just more forgiving, it's larger, it has a bigger footprint, so the pressure that you receive is not as specific, it's not as isolated, it kind of disperses out more. Great for things like abdominal work, when we put the ball in the belly and the organ work that we do. Great for the pelvic floor, you don't want something really, really heavy and hard when you go into like pelvic floor stuff. And again, just anyone that's more sensitive doesn't want quite as much intensity. If you want the intensity, you're going to go for the silver. It's a little bit larger, but it has this good density. It's a little bit of a different material. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Probably not, but you can see how this one's a little glossier. This one's more matte. So they're slightly different material, different consistency. Still great for really big, thick muscles like the quadriceps on the front of the legs, the hamstrings in the back of the legs. A lot of males like this because they, physiologically, males have thicker, more fibrous muscles. It's just harder to penetrate through. So this can actually help with that. It actually goes in a little bit deeper. Now, all of that said about the balls, I will say, if you're local to Columbus, I'm doing free delivery right now. So if you're local to Columbus, I have taken it upon myself to inflate the balls for you so that you don't have to do that. If you have a bike pump that has a detachable pin, you can get away with, if you're not in Columbus and you're ordering either from my website or the Yamuna website, I don't ship them blown up usually because they're much bigger. So if I'm shipping, or if you get them from the Yamuna headquarters website, they will come deflated, all but the black balls. The black balls do not come deflated. They're already blown up for you. But if you get any of these other balls, they do come deflated. So you will have to blow them up yourself either with a bike pump with a detachable pin, or you can purchase a Yamuna pump. So this little Yamuna hand pump is really convenient for if you're going to be traveling a lot and you want to be sort of inflating and deflating your balls a lot, or if you just want to be able to puff up air every now and again. This is nice to have. When I say detachable pin, this is what I mean. So this comes off. So when you want to inflate the ball, this is attached and you just stick it in. Just grab one here. You just stick it in the little hole and you make sure it's flush all the way to the thing, and then you just pump it up. So you can add a little bit of air. There is a variance of personal preference. So the balls can, over months and months, they might lose a puff or two of air. You might decide you want to pump it up, make it a little more strong. So you can do that again with a bike pump or with this. Or if you travel a lot, people that travel for work and stuff, and they're constantly inflating, deflating their balls just to save space, it's nice to have a little hand pump. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to cover about the ball specifically. Let me double check. I talked about how it differs from other myofascial techniques. And again, I want to point out that this is not the end-all be-all work. I am all about self-care salad, combining every modality that works for you. So this is one way to get to the same end. All of the somatic modalities out there, the goal is the same, right? Better function, better system function, feel better in your body, more flexibility, more range of motion. They're all valuable. They're all wonderful. I have lots of practitioners in other modalities. I dabble in as many as I can, and I encourage you to create your own system of self-care practices. This is one that is hugely complementary to anything else that you're doing. So this is not meant to replace anything. Hey Rochelle, how you doing? Glad to have you here. So yeah, it's not meant to replace anything. It's meant to be to use in conjunction with other modalities. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. I'm not trying to say that this is all you'll ever need. I mean, personally, it's one of the biggest things that I do, but whatever else you're doing, keep doing it, because it's all good. It's all going to the same place, right? It's all going to come out in the wash. Okay, so I talked about other balls. Okay, so how often should I do it? That's another question I hear all the time. How often should I roll? The answer is as often as you want, as often as you can. So this is not like some forms of exercise that are high impact where you have to take breaks in between. This is very low impact. You cannot overdo it. So if you are troubleshooting a very specific issue that you have, like say you were in a car accident and you had whiplash and now you have all these like neck and shoulder issues. If that's the case, the more you do it, the better. The more every single time you do even a little bit, 5 minutes of this work, every single time you do anything, it accumulates and it accumulates and it will become part of your new structure, your new system. So if you do it really a lot, often every day, a couple hours every day, you're going to see changes super duper fast. If you only do once a week for 30 minutes, you're still going to see changes, just not as fast. So the more you do it, the faster things will accumulate, the faster you're going to start to see really big improvements. But every time you do it, you are adding on to the last thing that you did. So you can't hurt yourself. There's a couple things that I do every single day, sometimes twice a day, little 5-minute things. And then there's some things that I visit maybe every 6 months. So it's very personal to you. But the point is that you can do it as often as you want. Now, the other question I get is, what time of day should I do it? And I like this question because, again, hey, Anya, where do you, I think she's probably hit enter too soon. Let's see what she said. Whoops, okay, we'll wait to hear the rest of her question. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk about what time of day you should do this. So where do you see changes at? Well, Anya, that depends on you'll see the changes in your whole body. So if you have a specific thing that you're working on, again, I used the whiplash example, but you could say plantar fasciitis, or you could say frozen shoulder, or you could say low back pain, whatever it is, you'll see changes all over your body. But if you're working on a specific thing, you're troubleshooting a specific issue, you're going to see changes in that area. So did that answer your question, or where do you see changes at first? It depends on what you start with. So if you watched, I think you watched that little intro video from ComFest. I think you commented on that. I think in that one I do sit bones and spine. So I'm guessing that you probably felt a little bit different in your legs and hips and probably in your spine after that. You can let me know and confirm if that's true or not. But is there a specific place that you're looking to make changes on yet, or are you just kind of looking for overall general information? I mean, because this brings me into another point I'll make right now, actually. It's a good segue. So this work is extremely personal to your body. So whatever's going on in your body is how you want to kind of enter into the journey. So when I teach a group class or a one-on-one session, I always tell people, first of all, don't follow me exactly. Like, don't try to be on my timeline. I might cue you to breathe. I usually tell people to do like 5 breaths at each stopping point. But you could do 50 breaths at a stopping point. Say you're rolling up your spine and you hit a point and it's like really delicious. It's right where you want to be. 5 breaths might not be enough. If you have time, you might just hang out there for a good, 10 minutes until you feel like you're ready to move the ball to the next place. So never feel like you have to look like the person next to you in a class, or like you have to look like me, because it's going to be very personal to your body, and not just your body, but your body on a given day. Like, if you just got done painting your house, you're going to need different stuff, and the routines are going to affect you differently than if you have been sitting on the couch all holiday season, right? So there's variance, not just within your body, but within time of the day and day of the week. Okay, let's see. I was just asking what your priority was and why you got started, I suppose. Cool. Thank you for asking. I'm happy to talk about my story personally. So the way I got started, Anya, was, as almost all of us, there's about 500 of us practitioners around the world, and almost every single one of us started this work because of chronic recurring pain or injury, and that includes me. So my issue was, I was in a car accident as a young child, did not have any kind of structural or energy work or anything at all after that. Fast forward to when I was in college in the dance department at Ohio State, and my injury flared because I was dancing so often, and I had negative movement patterns that I had never addressed, and I was moving in ways that were not efficient, we weren't optimal, and it created a recurrence or a resurgence of my original injury that actually led to me having to stop dancing for a while, and eventually led me to this work. So my issue was in my neck and shoulders. I had, it was, again, from the car accident originally, but I had a debilitating, I was not able to turn my head, I was not able to move or dance or support my head. I remember feeling like I had to like tie something around my head to keep it up. So that's how I started this. When I was still in Columbus, I was doing chiropractic and stuff, which was wonderful. Mary Jo Marafa, who is in this group, who is my amazing chiropractor and at times my client as well, she helped me so much with my injury. But when I moved to New York City in 2005, left my chiropractor behind, left my health insurance behind, was desperately searching for a way to take care of myself, and I discovered the Yamuna studio and became the receptionist there. So I started working there and was able to take classes from Yamuna, and immediately after the first day, I felt different, and I was completely floored because I had been at that point searching for years for something to give me some kind of boost or like push forward, and I finally found it in those classes. Very quickly saw, after I started taking classes regularly, very quickly saw changes, and then decided to take the plunge and become a teacher so I could share that with everybody. So that's my story, Anya. And I still struggle, I still have to be mindful of that injury, but I am light years beyond where I was 20 years ago when I was starting college and my injury really began in earnest. Light years beyond that. So thank you for asking. That's my story. And then, so we talked about how often should you do it, time of day should you do it. Last thing I want to say about that, sure, thank you, Anya, for asking. The last thing I want to say about what time of day, and someone just asked me about this. Ashley, I don't know if you're watching right now. I know that we talked about this a little bit. When should you do it? If you're going to go out and do some exercise or some work or something like that, should you do it before you go? Should you do it after? I actually recommend, if you're going to, like, say you're going to go for a run, you're training for a marathon and you're going to go for a run, but you've been having this nagging knee pain. When should you roll? After or before? If you roll before, if you do, say, a full leg routine, spend 20 minutes rolling out the hamstrings or whatever it is, if you do that before, then you are setting yourself up for optimal alignment when you go out and do your repetitive movement that you've likely been doing with less than optimal patterning for a long time. That's probably why you have the nagging knee pain, because there's probably something not lining up exactly. Maybe your femur's tilted or tipped so that it's not connecting to the knee properly, or maybe it's happening down in there might be something in your gait where your foot is not fully articulating, and that travels up to cause knee pain. So whatever the cause is, if you do the rolling before you go out, you'll be less likely to go into your old patterns, and you'll be more likely to move more efficiently with the new muscles that have wakened up that are really supposed to be doing the work. So you'll be less likely to recruit the old stuff that wasn't working for you. So I usually recommend doing the rolling before, and then maybe again after if you feel it, like you need it. Now, that said, that's just sort of my opinion. That doesn't mean you could just go out and run and come back and do damage control. So rolling before would be more of a preventative outlook. Doing it after is more like damage control. Both are very good, and I would definitely say if you can't do it before, do it after instead. But if you have time to kind of carve out a little bit of extra time before your gym visit or before your run or whatever it is, that's really what I recommend. The example that I was going to use with Ashley is she was talking about doing some weightlifting, and especially for something like weightlifting, I really recommend doing your rolling before, because in weightlifting specifically, you are strengthening, and if you are misaligned and you are strengthening at the same time, you are doing nothing but reinforcing and strengthening your misalignment and your movement pattern that we're trying to replace. So especially with something like weightlifting, if you have the time, do the rolling before. Okay, so is there anything else I wanted to say about that? What time of day? How much How much air should the balls have? I just touched on that a little bit. Like I said, they should have some give and buoyancy to them. You never want them to be so full of air that you can't squeeze them with your finger. You need to be able to push into them. If they're so full of air that they're rock hard, definitely too much air. All you do to take the air out, I don't know if I showed this yet, all you do to take the air out with your either detachable pin of your bike pump or with this pump, you just literally unscrew the pin, stick it in the valve, if you can find it right there. And it starts, I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it starts to deflate. So it's pretty easy to deflate. If it's rock hard, I would take, a couple puffs out of it to get it to be a little bit softer. And then which balls should I use? We already talked about that a little bit, but if you are someone that's really enthusiastic and you have all the balls, again, the black balls, they're smaller, they get into the smaller joints, great for armpit, underside shoulder joint, really good for like deep in the hip joint. If you want to get deep in the hip joint, you can do that with the black ball. It's a little bit smaller, so you can really get in there. Again, you can imagine this does not work with a foam roller. The larger balls, as I mentioned already, great for abdominal work. We do work where we really, there's a whole certification that I've done on just the organs. So you can realign your organs, great for digestion, prolapses, things like that. But for that, you would want something a little softer. It's just a little bit more forgiving. We do use the black balls for abdominal work too, but usually 2 at once, so it disperses your weight. The silver, like I said, is good for bigger, thicker muscles. And then the pearl is kind of my go-to. I didn't talk about the foot wakers at all yet. So as I said, there's hundreds of routines. There's no part of the body that you can't address with this work. And that includes everything from, the face. There's work for the face. There's work for the jaw, sinuses. There's work for the feet. There's work for organs. There's work for everything in between. So the footwork is done on these little half spheres. A lot of people we kind of call them hedgehogs. They look a little bit like hedgehogs. And this is something that you can do seated in a chair or standing. And it's the same concepts as all the other stuff, restoring space in the bones and learning how to articulate and roll out the full muscle. So this is an example. Someone was asking me recently, I think it was, Anya, I'm not sure if it was you or your sister, but someone was asking about how to do it at work. The foot wakers are great to have at work. You can have them under your desk. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to carve out extra time. You can just be working your feet while you're working at your computer. Or like I keep a pair in my kitchen for when I'm cooking or washing dishes. I'll stand on these. So these are also really versatile. They don't require any blowing up. They're very hard, they're very dense, and a little painful at first. So if you've ever taken any feet classes with me, they are a little bit painful at first, but that hurts so good kind of feeling. That feeling of, oh, it kind of hurts, but I can tell that it's the right thing. The same feeling you get when you're getting a massage and your therapist goes really deep and it's like, yeah, that hurts, but you're like, keep going. That's how this work is. So it's hurts so good is kind of your goal. Okay, so the final thing I want to talk about, unless you have any other questions, and feel free to type them into the comments, the final thing I want to talk about is this group specifically and how to kind of navigate through it. The Facebook algorithm is so confusing in that, whatever, people might see a post from a year ago and comment on it, and then that post is going to show up at the top of the feed, which can be confusing if you're trying to go back and look for something specific. So I want to just kind of give you a little heads up about how you can kind of navigate through this group. So if you go to the group homepage, there's the cover photo, and then I think there's some words, and then underneath that are like menu options in a horizontal strip. And one of them is units. It's called units. And this group is, I forget what they call it, what Facebook calls it. It's like a tutorial group, like it's meant for education. I forget the term that they use, but it has that feature. And this units feature is amazing because it's like a perfect way to organize all this stuff. So it's still a work in progress in this group, and I am constantly trying to upgrade like how the unit, just what I have in the units and how they're organized and stuff. But already, if you go there, there's like, I don't know how many units there are, but there's a lot of them. And I have them divided mostly by body part, and then some of them you'll see by like concepts or topics or like ailments. So I think most of them are like, feet, neck, shoulders, whatever, but there might be some that are, I tend to add at least, I want to do like a unit for like plantar fasciitis and fibromyalgia and like all the different things that I work with all the time. Want to have a unit for each of those as well. But if you start perusing those units and browsing through them, you will see all kinds, like basically everything I ever post in this group eventually is going to make its way to a unit. It's going to be categorized. So say I post a little video about jaw pain. then I would later go back and put it in like the jaw unit. I don't know if there's a jaw unit yet, but I'm still working on it all, but you get the idea. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, it's 3 in the morning, and you have a cramp in your leg, well, what are you gonna do about that? You could hop onto the group and go to the legs unit and browse through all the different little videos that I've posted on rolling through the legs. There's also a lot of other resources in there as well. It's not just videos that I've done, it's also articles that I find really pertinent, videos from other practitioners or other modalities that I think are really pertain to what we're talking about. Photographs, visual aids, whatever it is, but everything basically gets categorized into that group. So if you think of the units section as kind of like your main bag in this group, that's basically where I am spending most of my energy, is trying to keep those organized. Then I think you'll find a slew of free resources. I mean, there's tons of content in there already, and it just keeps growing. So you should be able to find something in one of the units that will help you feel better if you, again, wake up at 3 in the morning and you have a leg cramp, or whatever the example is. Other than that, in the group, if you want to be able to see the feed in real time, as opposed to like anytime there's new comments, if you want to see the posts in chronological order in real time, you can, there's right after you get into the feed part of the group, there's a little tiny, it's almost hard to see, there's a little tiny thing that says new activity. It defaults to new activity, but if you click on it, it'll give you the option to see recent posts, and then that means that's going to be in the order that things were posted. So like if I made a post yesterday about something, it'll show up in order instead of be buried under something that happened a year ago that someone happened to just comment on. I hope that makes sense. It's just the Facebook algorithm. We have to like figure out how to get the Facebook gods to work with us here. So if you really prefer to see your feed in chronological order, you can change that on your own. Otherwise, if you're looking for something that you can't find, I recommend going through the units section. Okay, I think that was everything that I wanted to address. Does anyone else have any questions? I feel like there's probably something that is a huge question that I always get that I totally forgot to put in here. And if that's the case, I'll maybe add it to the comments or talk about it next week. Next week, what I want to do after this video for this week, what I want to do next week is do a little rolling, really basic stuff, back to basics, foundational concepts of Yamuna. I was going to do that today and then kept getting all these frequently asked questions. I was like, I need to just get these questions answered. Next week, we'll do some actual rolling with this new knowledge that you have from these frequently asked questions, and we'll do really basic stuff, probably just like a 5-minute little routine that is sort of a classic Yamuna routine. So be there for that if you can, live or on replay. And if anyone has any other questions, Sue says, thanks for the Facebook lessons. You got it, Sue. We've got the whole family here. In non-pandemic times, where do I teach? Great question. So before pandemic, I was brick and mortar exclusive. I didn't do anything online and had absolutely zero plans to do anything online. This group didn't exist. I did have a business page, which still is out there. And I still update it and stuff, but it's all about the group now because our community is amazing. So I have a studio, which this is my space. This is where I do all of my one-on-one classes. It's just up the road from my house here in Clintonville. This is where I do all my one-on-ones, and I do some group classes in here as well. It's big enough for small groups. So this is sort of my home base, but I also was doing a lot of sort of outreach where I would go to various studios all over town and teach there as well. So places that I've taught in the past are Pi Yoga, let's see, Bar 3, B Yoga, I teach for Columbus Modern Dance Company, Centered Yoga up north. I'm trying to think, there's so many that I used to travel around to. Honestly, now that once we are post-pandemic, I'm probably not going to be doing that traveling now around as much because of this group, I'm able to communicate with you all in one place without having to schlep a huge bag of heavy balls all over town, 30 minutes one way to teach a class, 30 minutes another way. That's exhausting. I really love having a sort of one-stop shop here in my space, being able to be online. When we are back in person, I will be opening the doors back up to this space, but I will continue the online component because it has been wonderful. I now have, in my mentorship program, we span 4 time zones, 3 countries. That would have never happened, obviously, if I were still doing brick and mortar here in town. There are people local that are in my mentorship too, so it's kind of a neat mix. Once we're back in person, that mentorship and all my other offerings will be a hybrid of in-person and online. So basically, anytime I teach in person, I will also be streaming it on Zoom for other people to attend as well that are not local. So there's that answer. So if anyone else has any questions, you can type them in the comments. If you think of it after, go ahead and just type them in the comments of this video so that it's kind of all in one place, and I will answer them there. One last thing I want to say is that in this group, Body Restored and Sustain, I really encourage you to engage and make your own posts. So I want it to be a place that you can pop in and type questions, make your own post with a question that you might have, and I will of course answer it, but there's probably, we have right now about 300 some people in the group and growing quickly. I'm sure there's at least a dozen other people with your question or that have experienced what you're experiencing or whatever. So if anything comes up, whether it's a question or just a win that you want to share, or just some sort of like feedback or observation, like, hey, I did the spine class and now I have all this freedom in my neck, whatever it is, post in the group. I really want to encourage other people to post, so it's not just all about me. I want to hear what other people have to say and what their thoughts are as well. So thank you for being here. This went on longer than I was expecting. I appreciate all of you hanging out as long as you did. Oh, Sue, thank you. I've been at the church across the street from my house, Park of Roses. I do outdoor classes. Even during the pandemic in the summer, I was doing class in the grass at a church across the street from my house here in Clintonville. Yeah, there's tons of places that I teach or have taught. But like I said, I'm really trying to kind of go rogue now and just do my own thing because it's just so much easier, and I feel like it's more effective for everybody else because you can find it all in one place. You don't have to find me here, find me there, keep track of my schedule. I'm always here. If you want to find me, you know where to find me. It's just much easier, I think, for everybody. Yeah, Anya, yeah, definitely. Even after the pandemic, class in the grass is still going to happen for sure. It's so wonderful as the seasons change, being able to hear the birds and the clouds and the breeze. It's just magical. So those will be happening one way or another indefinitely. So yeah, thank you all for being here, and hope to see you next week when we do a little foundational, short little, probably 1 or 2 routines. And in the meantime, browse the group, ask questions, make your posts, try out the videos, and let me know how it's going. All right, thank you everyone. Have a great week. See you soon.